going to give my reasons for doing this after this short clip.
Pornhub had done an amazing job at spending millions of dollars making itself this household, mainstream brand name for porn, where people were wearing their apparel in public. We're walking New York Fashion Week, and there was faux commercials on Saturday Night Live. The site makes most of its money by selling 4.6 billion ad impressions on Pornhub every single day. So they call it the underage guessing game, where they're just playing Russian roulette with people's lives. They're trying to guess who's 16 and who's 18, what's rough sex and what's rape. The solution at scale to this problem is age and consent verification for every single person in every video.
Well, duh.
Yeah, like duh, right? Like, how is that not already the standard? And it's not just a free-for-all on the side of uploading. They're not verifying the ages of those who are accessing the free porn sites either. Kids are being exploited in front of the screen, and they're being exploited in back of the screen.
So the reason why I want to do this has actually been on my mind for a long period of time. And just to throw a disclaimer out there, this is not me trying to talk about those that are over 18, those that are adults watching pornography on their mobile phones or their laptops. This is about those that are under 18, young teenagers and even sometimes children consuming pornography. And this pornography can be quite extreme at times, and I'm just wondering what it's doing to a young person's brain. Both the boys, maybe teaching them the ways that they should be behaving in sexual situations, and maybe for the girls, teaching them what's to be expected of them. Very, very complicated. We have, I'm not going to get too much into it. I want to get a bit more into this conversation first. It's from Michaela Peterson's podcast. This lady called Layla Micklethwait is trying to break down what has been created in our society, which seems to be the norm, which is watching pornography, especially with there being no age verification on these websites. And what is this doing to young people's brains?
Or let's get into this aspect, the more like psychological repercussions of watching porn. Do you know what happens to a developing brain or even an adult brain if you get addicted to porn? Is the porn addiction thing real?
So there's so much debate around this. Some people want to kind of split hairs over whether they can call it addiction or whether they have to call it, compulsive or sexual compulsivity. And, there's people all over the world who are, by the thousands, young men in forums saying that they can't control their porn use and that they want help, right? And so whether you call it addiction or sexual compulsion, I think these people do need help if they can't control that and it's having a detrimental effect on their life. I'm not an expert in the brain science of porn addiction. So that's, I focus on the actual criminal content that's being distributed and all fair. Of that. But there is a really good book called Your Brain on Porn. There's an organization called the Reward Foundation. There's lots of neuroscientists who are looking at this and trying to understand the implications of it. But, there's people who are saying it's causing depression, anxiety. They're also, saying that they have an issue where they may start out with one type of porn and they never imagined that they would kind of go down this rabbit hole.
I've heard this, yeah.
Where I think it's called habituation or desensitization, where they don't just need more porn to get that same dopamine hit, where they need different kinds of porn. So they need more novelty. And then they end up going, more violent, maybe younger. And they end up even sometimes as consumers of CSAM, child sexual abuse material, when they didn't actually start out as a pedophile. Like they then went down that road because of, the teen categories and then kind of going more and more extreme, younger, more violent, things like that, which is super detrimental.
Okay, so let me stop it there. So many points that I want to make. The first thing is it's so unusual, isn't it, that we have this content available online with no age verification. We have age verifications on many things in our countries, one being alcohol, one being cigarettes. Let's just take those two as an example. And the reason why we do that is because we know it's not good for a a young brain to be consuming those substances. The brain isn't developed enough yet. Alcohol can be hugely destructive in many ways, and so can smoking. We all agree on that. Then we have this content that's available online, pornography, which we also agree overconsumption is not healthy for the brain for various reasons, and we're talking about that in your adulthood. So if that's the case, like cigarettes and alcohol, then for the developing brain, it's going to be no good. But the weird thing is this has been around for decades now, available on mobile phones and computers, and we've known that, and we haven't done anything about it, even though we know younger and younger age groups are consuming this. And you just got to think about, I mean, I just put myself in the position of being a young 13-year-old. My hormones start racing, I start going through puberty, and I start looking at my mobile phone and searching for that release or that dopamine hit that I would have got from pornography. Honestly, I would have been on it all of the time. And I'm sure any other males that are watching this podcast or listening along on your podcast app would agree with me. Unless there were restrictions put in place to stop young people, myself as a 13-year-old, from watching it. Now, they're saying in this conversation, aren't they, that you can get dragged down rabbit holes because the algorithm is clever. What it's suggesting is the next video for you to watch is clever, and you're being drawn in by this satisfying of one of your deepest desires, which is a sexual desire that is like ingrained in us as human beings. Let's continue with this conversation.
I used to think that sounded crazy. Not that I was ever an expert in this at all. I was like, there's no way like a porn addiction's an addiction like a drug addiction. Like that doesn't make sense. But then over the last, I guess it'd be maybe 3 or 4 years, once I found out about Pornhub and all this, because I knew a little bit about it, I've been talking to more and more people my age, but like men mostly, who are like, yeah, I had a hard time dropping it. And yeah, I was desensitized. And yeah, I did make relationships harder, all this, which I don't know enough about the stats. I'll have to have somebody on the podcast to talk about it, because I was like, I don't think I've heard from as many women that it does that to women.
Yeah.
But I can understand if you're getting this dopamine spike constantly, that it could be addictive.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people who are saying that. I mean, just anecdotally, I get messages all the time from especially young men, but also women, who say that they cannot stop. They want to stop and they can't. And sometimes they're messaging me because they're saying, well, finally, for the first time, I feel like maybe I have the ammunition, knowing that there's a victim on the other side of the screen to stop me from doing what I don't want to do. And thank you for that. Like, I needed that ammunition to give me the fortitude to actually stop. But they're telling me all the time, like, I want to, and I can't. And so if you want to do something and you can't, and you feel like it's bad for you, whatever we call it, like, let them get help. And I think one of the horrible things is that there are people out there that are trying to give people help, and they're being attacked all the time. They're being, it's hard. It's really hard.
Okay, let me just stop it there. If you're watching along on YouTube, you can see on the screen there's a book that is placed next to Layla called Take Down, and that's her book trying to take down, I believe she's trying to go for the content that's available on Pornhub, which isn't the person in the video, mostly women in the video, they're not age verified, and she's saying that there are millions of videos on Pornhub which are of those those girls that are featuring in the videos are under 18, which is illegal. So that's her book. Go check it out. I've listened to some of the podcasts that she's been on, really interesting. So they're focusing on the addiction side of things, and that is to be a problem which I believe will surface itself more and more as we begin to accept the effects of pornography. That's not really what I'm trying to focus on here. One of the things they mentioned in the earlier snippet of the video was the fact that you can get pulled down rabbit holes during your watching of the pornography, especially as you're inhibitions have been loosened because you are being aroused. Now, I have heard somebody talk about this before. You are when you're being sexually aroused, especially as a male, you are drawn to the forbidden. You're drawn to the breaking of rules because your inhibitions have been lowered. Very interesting, psychologically, very interesting. There, I find that very interesting, and so when your screen is very cleverly designed, the way that the pornography website interfaces with you, and you've got all these incredibly luring thumbnails popping up everywhere, up next, suggested next, just as your YouTube platform runs, just as your Instagram platform runs, just as your TikTok platform runs. They're hugely sophisticated, and you're in a state of arousal, and you're just clicking and you're clicking, and then you get pulled down a certain category that maybe you wouldn't have watched if pornography wasn't around. Maybe you wouldn't have even been curious about if pornography wasn't around. But you click that thumbnail because it's so enticing, and you're in that mood at the time, and then the algorithm suggests more and more videos within that category, and then within a month or two you're deep into that category, but previously you wouldn't have been. Now, when we take a 13-year-old or a 15-year-old watching this, they're a lot more malleable. We just know that young teenagers are more easily influenced and more easily manipulated, so they will be pulled down these rabbit holes even easier. Now, there is a reason why I'm focusing on this, because around last year I did a podcast on the teen porn category. So that's ages 18 and 19, the teen category that we know is available, and that the producers of content within that category are always pushing the boundaries. So you have girls featuring that are clearly looking under 18, but they're not actually under 18, and they're being put they're being put in bedrooms with teddy bears and little girl curtains and beds, and to quite clearly be portraying someone that's underage. And apparently those are the types of videos that are getting the most views. The producers of these videos were quite open in that podcast. I'll put the link in the description of that particular episode. You can go check that out. It's going to, in fact, it was hard to record, and it's a hard watch. It's about an hour and a half long. So we can see how these young people can get pulled down these rabbit holes, and also into more violent sides of pornography. I heard the statistic is that 80% of all pornography that's out there is male dominated. So it's where the male is not taking advantage of. That would be me putting a label on it that is judging in some kind of way. That didn't seem very good, the way I said it. 80% of all pornography is male dominated, where the storyline or the narrative is where the male gets what they want in the end. So is that good? We talk a lot about toxic masculinity. We talk a lot about big influences online affecting our boys, when one of my thoughts is pornography gets more hits, gets more views than all of those influences put together. And that probably is something that we need to be very, very concerned with. How is pornography programming these boys' minds? When you think about a 16-year-old who started watching pornography when he was 13, so 3 years of being marinated in these kind of narratives, it can't be good.
Financial interest from the porn industry to make sure that, this doesn't seem like it could be a problem for people.
Yeah. And that's probably, I came from, I don't know what your background is, but like growing up in Toronto, super liberal. And so my view until more recently was like, kind of control yourself. It's fine. Let people do whatever they want. Which like, I still kind of, I don't even know what I think right now. I'm going to have to sit on that and think about it. But a vanilla example, I suppose, would be I stopped watching horror movies. I was obsessed with horror movies as a kid. And this is, like I said, a vanilla example. But I got completely desensitized to horror movies. And I was like, I got to a point, I think it was probably after I had a baby, where I was like, I don't really want to see that anymore. Or it was after I stopped taking antidepressants, probably. I was like, I don't want to watch horror movies anymore. And I stopped. And the first time I saw a horror movie, which was like 4 years after I stopped watching them, I was like, oh my gosh, blood, like gore. This is crazy. And so I think you can probably desensitize yourself as a human to content, because when you stop watching certain content, it's shocking. And I can see that easily happening.
Well, that's the
I mean, come on, that's just normal kind of common sense, isn't it? You start watching something that gets more extreme in any direction and you start to become used to that, and then you're looking for the next level of extremity. And this horror movie analogy I think is really, really good. And again, we just move it back to those young boys in particular that are watching it, but also the young girls that are coming across pornography, or in fact watching it themselves and thinking that this is something to be expected of them. There is a short thing that I heard somebody say, and somebody actually kind of come at me online about this, saying that that's just fake. But I heard it, a teacher saying that one of her students once said, "Miss, how do we choke girls safely?" During their PSHE lesson. And that's just such a horrifying statement to hear young boys even thinking about that. They must have been watching it online, or coming across that type of sexual interaction and deciding that that's what they want to do. And that's but the thing is, we're talking about young boys who are watching this for years before they've even had sex yet, maybe even before they've even kissed a girl. They're marinated. I use that word marinated again because I think it's such a good word to describe it. It's like they're soaked in pornography for years of pornography watching before they actually ever do anything with a girl, and that cannot be good.
plasticity, because just like, the brain pathways, they can connect in certain ways, right? It's kind of like, they call it, it's like plastic, right? It's bendable, but it goes both ways. So if you make those negative pathways, or the desensitization and all of that stuff that happens, habituation, and I'm not a neuroscientist, but I have read enough about this to understand that there, Dr. Donald Hilton, he's actually a brain surgeon, and he's been investigating porn addiction for a long time. And he talks about neuroplasticity, but he says if you actually stop, right, then you can actually retrain your brain pathways to, undo the damage that has been done. So that's really encouraging, I think, to a lot of people to know that, so probably when you stopped watching the horror movies for a long time, and then when you saw them again, it was shocking to you because you had kind of maybe undone some of that habituation and desensitization in your brain.
I was surprised because I used to watch them with absolutely no emotional response, really. Now, I was on antidepressants, so it's hard to say what that was doing as well. But I was surprised the first time I saw the beginning of because I didn't watch it. I was like, nope, that's too much for me. So I thought, I'm sure it's easy to desensitize yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, wild.
Yeah, and that does happen. And I think there was just a research paper out of the University of New South Wales. I just read Dr. Michael Salter. So he investigates child sexual abuse material. He's a professor, and he puts out studies. And what it was summarizing what they had looked at, and they saw that there is some connections between people who are daily porn consumers, who have a hypersexuality, that are viewing these kinds of categories like teen, like incest, like the very violent content, and actual they're showing a correlation between that and people acting out upon actual children and actually consuming real child sexual abuse material. So there is a concern here for people who are viewing, especially these problematic kinds of pornographic content.
Okay, so we're concentrating there mostly on the adults and offenders, sex offenders against children, and what their relation to them and pornography is. There are some statistics out there. I don't know them off the top of my head, but there has been a study, I'm pretty sure, on researching those that have been convicted and their previous pornography usage. I think there's also some kind of correlation between those who have been found with images and videos of children in sexual abuse situations on their mobile phone and their pornography usage as well. So there are all of these correlations, but again, I'm just going to keep bringing it back to what I'm trying to focus on, and that is pornography usage, consumption amongst our young teenagers and children at times. Something that came into my mind when I was just watching that. Do you remember back in the day, to see a film which was rated over 18 at the cinema, you needed ID. To watch something on the TV which was deemed suitable for adults only, you needed to stay up way past your bedtime at that time. It would have been late at night, or maybe not even shown on national TV. There used to be restrictions on things. All films had age verifications on. You couldn't get access to them. Of course, you could get a pirate copy, or somebody had a copy in some kind of way that you could pass around your friendship group, something like that. Of course, that's always happening. But now, everything is just freely available. What's happened to us as a community when it comes to protecting young minds? It's almost like the profit-making companies, which is what these two women talked about here. These are profit-making companies, and if they can distribute their content to as many people as possible, sell more ads, that's what they're concerned with. They don't want age verification on their websites. Why? Because a percentage of their viewers will be under 18s, and if they're not on their platform, they can't sell ads to. And that's really what it comes down to. But my interest is why, this has clearly been a problem since this was available online. So why does the government not step in and just sort the problem out? It's quite that the solution is there. It's not like we need to engineer a solution. Age verification on all websites via credit card, something like that.
Definitely.
Yikes.
Yeah. Not that everybody does it. I mean,
No.
you know, there's people who can watch that content and never act out, right? But there's also a concern that it can lead certain people down that path to actually act out.
I mean, that makes sense. You have to be careful with your brain. It's a very plastic entity, like you said.
Yeah.
So that's a nice snippet of the conversation, which is actually available online, which is a larger 1.5 hour conversation. Obviously, I'm not going to review the whole thing. I just wanted to get that as a conversation starter. Please go check out these people's work. They are making a stand. And this is all about the protection from abuse and exploitation of children and teenagers from people, but also companies. That's what we're involved with, and we don't want our young people being influenced into ways that are not healthy and are not safe for all parties concerned. So we just want to sort this out, and I just can't believe it hasn't been sorted out. But the other day, when I was thinking about recording this, I came across a BBC article. Let me just pull that up 1 second. Okay, so we have something to be optimistic about. Here's the title of this BBC article: Pornhub to introduce government-approved age checks in the UK. So this all just worked out really nicely for me recording this. Finally, we have some movement which should have happened ages ago. So let me just go down the article. I'm going to read it through. I'm going to pull out a couple of paragraphs that we can just speak to together. 1 second. Okay, so overall, this is a nice article. Let me just read you a couple of paragraphs. Pornhub and a number of other major adult websites have confirmed they will introduce enhanced age checks for users from next month. This is from the 26th of June, 2025. It's now the 6th of August at the time I'm recording this. Parent company ALO says it is bringing in government-approved age assurance methods, but has not yet revealed how it will require users to prove that they're over 18. It can't just be a click. Yes, I'm over 18, because obviously everybody's going to click that. It needs to be something linked to a bank statement or something like that. So the website goes on. I'm not going to read it all because The link will be in the description. You can read that. But there's some nice statements on here. Society has long protected youngsters from products that aren't suitable for them, from alcohol to smoking or gambling. For too long, children have only been a click away from harmful pornography online. Just being exposed to pornography, not just harmful pornography or not harmful pornography, just pornography as a whole. They shouldn't have been consuming it. They shouldn't have been exposed to it. Their maturity level, their brain development is not ready for that yet. The dopamine hits, the addictions, the being pulled down rabbit holes. We've been through all of that today. We know that a highly effective age assurance can play a vital role in protecting young users from accessing harmful and inappropriate material on social media and other platforms. It's time tech companies take responsibility for ensuring children have a safe, age-appropriate experience online, and we welcome the progress that Ofcom are making in this space. Okay, so the rest of the article is around that. I would like a journalist to write an article on why it's taken the government so long to do this, something that we all agree with. As parents, we all agree with this. I'm sure teachers, I'm sure anyone that's in care of young people is all in agreement with this. But thankfully, we have some movement, reason to be optimistic. We always need to be optimistic about these things, because otherwise it just feels like the situation is hopeless and we'll never get anywhere with it. So I hope that was interesting to you. I wonder whether you've ever thought about this before, whether this has even ever crossed your mind, or whether pornography and its growth in its millions has just been a thing that's happened in society and it just kind of became the norm. I believe that to be the case. So it's about time that we put children and teenagers as a priority, their safety of their childhood as a priority, their developing brains as a priority, for us to keep as safe as possible. That's what a lot of all my work is about. It's starting, you will start to see, especially on my social media platforms now, it's starting to not just be about sexual abuse prevention, it is about their safety as a whole. And I think that's a good direction for my work to go down. Thank you.